Death is one of the few experiences shared by every human who has ever lived. It affects every culture, every civilization, every family, and every individual. But have you ever wondered how ancient humans reacted when someone died? Did they feel grief the way we do? Did they understand what death meant? Did they hold funerals? Did they believe in an afterlife? Or were the earliest humans simply concerned with survival? The answer is surprisingly fascinating, because evidence suggests that humans have been responding to death emotionally for far longer than most people realize. In fact, the story may stretch back hundreds of thousands of years, long before cities, long before writing, long before civilization itself. To understand how ancient humans reacted to death, we must first imagine a world very different from our own. A world without hospitals, without cemeteries, without religious texts, without scientific explanations. A world where death was far more common. Life expectancy was lower. Disease was common. Injuries were frequent. Predators posed constant threats. Death was not an occasional event. It was a regular part of daily life. Ancient humans encountered death constantly, yet that does not mean they became indifferent to it. In fact, archaeological evidence suggests the opposite. One of the most important clues comes from burials. When archaeologists discover ancient graves, they are finding more than bones. They are finding evidence of behavior, evidence of choices, evidence that someone cared enough to treat the dead in a particular way. And some of these graves are astonishingly old. The oldest known intentional burials may date back over 100,000 years. In several locations across Africa and the Middle East, archaeologists have discovered human remains that appear to have been deliberately placed into the ground. This may not sound remarkable at first, but consider the alternative. A group could simply leave a body where it died. Many animals do exactly that. Yet these ancient humans invested time and energy into handling the dead. Why? That question has fascinated researchers for decades. Perhaps practical concerns played a role. A decomposing body can attract predators. It can spread disease. Moving the body away from living areas may have been useful. But many burials appear to involve more than practicality. Some bodies were placed carefully, in specific positions, sometimes with objects nearby. This suggests intention, and perhaps something deeper. The possibility that ancient humans attached meaning to death. One famous example comes from Neanderthals. For many years, scientists debated whether Neanderthals buried their dead. Today, evidence suggests that at least some groups probably did. Several Neanderthal skeletons have been discovered in what appear to be intentional graves, bodies positioned carefully, protected from scavengers, sometimes placed within natural cave depressions. If Neanderthals were intentionally burying their dead, it would suggest something remarkable. Because Neanderthals lived hundreds of thousands of years ago, long before modern civilization, long before agriculture. Yet they may have recognized that death mattered. Some researchers have even proposed that Neanderthals experienced grief. While emotions do not fossilize, certain discoveries hint at strong social bonds. For example, archaeologists have found individuals who survived severe injuries for years, broken bones, physical disabilities, serious illnesses, conditions that would have made independent survival nearly impossible. The fact that these individuals lived suggests they received care from others. Their communities helped them survive. And if communities cared for vulnerable members during life, it seems reasonable that they may also have cared about them after death. The emergence of Homo sapiens added another layer to the story. As modern humans spread across the world, burial practices became increasingly elaborate. Some graves contain tools, jewelry, weapons, pigments, animal remains, decorative objects. These discoveries suggest that death was no longer viewed merely as a biological event. It may have become connected to belief, symbolism, identity, and perhaps spirituality. One particularly famous site comes from Sungir in modern-day Russia. Around 34,000 years ago, two children were buried with thousands of ivory beads, carefully arranged decorations, weapons, and ornaments. Creating these objects required enormous effort. The people who buried those children invested valuable resources into the burial. Why would they do that? There is no simple answer, but it strongly suggests that the dead held significance beyond practical concerns. The burial itself mattered. The ceremony mattered. The memory mattered. Over time, evidence for ritual behavior becomes increasingly common. Red ochre appears in many ancient burials. This natural pigment produces a deep red color. Some researchers believe it may have symbolized blood, life, rebirth, or transformation. Nobody knows for certain, but the repeated appearance of ochre suggests that it carried meaning. Ancient humans were not randomly sprinkling colored powder onto graves. They were performing actions that likely held symbolic importance. And symbolism is a powerful clue. Because symbolism reflects abstract thinking, the ability to attach meaning to objects and events, the ability to think beyond the immediate moment, the ability to imagine things that cannot be directly observed, including what might happen after death. Did ancient humans believe in an afterlife? The honest answer is that nobody knows. Beliefs do not fossilize. We cannot interview people who lived tens of thousands of years ago. But some archaeological evidence suggests the possibility. When bodies are buried with tools, weapons, food, or ornaments, some researchers argue these objects may have been intended for use beyond death. Others caution that the items could simply represent social status or cultural tradition. The truth remains uncertain. Yet one thing is clear: ancient humans were thinking about death. They were not ignoring it. They were responding to it. And those responses became increasingly sophisticated over time. Death may also have played an important role in the development of religion. Many scholars believe questions about death helped inspire spiritual beliefs. What happens when someone dies? Where do they go? Do they continue to exist? Can they return? These questions are deeply human, and they likely emerged very early in our history. Even today, nearly every culture develops explanations for death. The desire to understand mortality appears almost universal. Part of this may stem from self-awareness. Humans do not merely experience life. We understand that life eventually ends. That realization can be unsettling, but it can also inspire meaning, stories, beliefs, traditions, and rituals. Death may have helped shape some of humanity's earliest forms of culture. Another fascinating clue comes from mourning behavior. While grief leaves no direct archaeological evidence, modern psychology suggests strong social species often experience emotional responses to loss. Humans certainly do. And interestingly, some animals appear to as well. Elephants have been observed interacting with the bones of deceased herd members. Chimpanzees sometimes remain near dead companions. Certain whales and dolphins have displayed behavior that resembles mourning. These observations do not prove that ancient humans grieved exactly as we do, but they suggest that emotional responses to death may have deep evolutionary roots. Social bonds create attachment. Attachment creates loss, and loss creates grief. For ancient humans living in small groups, every individual mattered. A skilled hunter mattered. An experienced elder mattered. A parent mattered. A child mattered. The death of a community member could affect everyone, not only emotionally, but practically. Knowledge disappeared. Skills disappeared. Relationships disappeared. Entire social structures could be affected. This may explain why funerary practices became so important. They provided a way to respond collectively, to acknowledge loss, to preserve memory, to strengthen social bonds during difficult times. Funerals are not only about the dead, they are also about the living. They help communities cope, and that may have been true tens of thousands of years ago. As civilizations emerged, reactions to death became even more elaborate. Ancient Egypt developed complex burial traditions centered around the afterlife. Mesopotamians created funerary rituals. Ancient Chinese societies honored ancestors. Greek and Roman cultures developed their own ceremonies. The details varied, but the underlying concern remained remarkably similar. Humans wanted to understand death, and they wanted to honor the dead. Yet, despite all the cultural differences, certain themes appear again and again. Respect, memory, community, meaning. These ideas seem to transcend geography and time. And perhaps that is because death forces humans to confront some of life's biggest questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What remains after we are gone? Ancient humans may not have known the answers, neither do we, but they were asking the questions, just as we still do today.